use like this system so much that they're giving our clients a 25% reduction in the cost of water. So we're using half the water, and for that half the water, they're paying only 75% of what other people are paying.
The recycling chutes, we feel that we got to pay back within 5 years, which is what we look for on a typical investment, is a 5-year payback.
Building green seems to be another way of saying building smarter. So why aren't more people doing it?
There's something very specific in the American economy relative to the way buildings are built, marketed, and sold. And that is, in the United States, if you build a building, let's say you build a high-rise, the chances are you're going to lease it to someone or you're going to resell it. The thought process is not tied to the larger collective social mission. It's tied to tax policy and limited operating costs and low initial cost of the building. In Europe, they tend to look at building over a 50-year period. What is the building going to cost initially is part of the equation, but what is it going to cost to operate, keep and repair, keep online, and if you need to take it down, to disassemble over a 50-year period. Similar in Japan. In the United States, 12 months.
What's going to be interesting about these buildings, these, from the Bank of America building to the Foster building to all of the ones that are coming up right now, is how we can test if they are truly sustainable. I think they're saying the right things, and they have the features designed into them and engineered into them. So I think it's going to be a test of time in, first of all, how people use them.
A building is meant to be occupied and have people working in it, so to make it as efficient as the building itself as efficient as possible means to make the people working in it as efficient as possible.
The very highest cost of every operative building is the people cost inside. And so if you look at the bottom line of building, keeping people comfortable and happy, whose salaries can be more than 200 times the cost of energy per unit in the operation of the building. When you look at that picture holistically, not just of what the building costs, but what the lives cost inside to keep safe, to keep comfortable, to keep happy with their work, so that they have a commitment to the place that they work, the company they work, and the city where they live. Those are the kinds of equations that I think argue for sustainability.
Imagine, just imagine, buildings that make people feel better, inside and out.
4 Times Square had 85% particulate filtration. So it takes air in, it filters 85% of the particulate matter in the air and circulates it through the building and then ultimately exhausts it. At One Bryant Park, we'll have 95% particulate filtration. We'll also have gas phase filters. So between these two buildings, they'll act like 2 giant skyscraper air filters in the middle of Midtown. The air coming out of the buildings is cleaner than the air coming in.
Do you like to breathe clean air? Who's going to say no? Do you like your water to be potable and clean and healthy? Do you like your food to be nourishing and fresh and healthy? If the answers are yes to those questions, then I think we have defined sustainability. We have defined human life in the 21st century, basically.
How do we make this happen? Is it the government? Is it private sector? The answer is yes. Both. Everybody. We all have a responsibility. That think globally, act locally, that's overused so much, it's real. We all must take action. Government impact. Down at Battery Park City, the green guidelines. That's an administration who said if you want to build on this government-owned land, you must build green. It took off like crazy. Huge success. Unbelievable.
Just after 2001 and the fall of the Trade Center Towers, as challenged as this immediate neighborhood was just across the street from the Ground Zero site, a new building, the Solaire, broke ground and has grown up in the last 3 or 4 years to be the first residential green apartment house, not only in New York, but in America.
Battery Park City decided to make all future development Battery Park City, which is going to amount to 4.5 million square feet, which is the size of a lot of small downtowns. All of those buildings to be under very ambitious environmental guidelines.
Raphael Pelli is very important in all of this. First of all, he trained himself. He's an architect, but he was not taught sustainable design and architecture. This was not his upbringing. It is not his father's upbringing. So he's in his father's office, which gets a lot of commissions. He could have built unsustainably forever. He didn't have to do this.
We were the guinea pigs, but there was no question whether to do these things. If you're going to spend weeks discussing whether to be trying to achieve these goals, you've lost a big part of your most precious resource, which is time. I had been interested in these issues for years. We had been pursuing learning about them, but in more academic environments of conferences and symposiums and implementing some ideas in our building. But this was full immersion, and we went from trying to apply what we knew in an academic sense to really trying to apply it in a building, which is a very different kind of experience. One of the first things we had to do when we designed the Solaire was re-examine and to some extent redesign the design process itself. Alongside with the engineers, starting at the day one, we were reacting as much to their studies about different ways to approach the building as it was them responding to us. That was the biggest lesson for us in the Solaire, was the ability collectively to discuss and find solutions for very tricky issues across so many different fields. We're standing on the roof of the Solaire. This is the upper roof. This is also what's called a green roof, which has a soil mixture on top of which is a ground cover called sedum, which serves to warm and insulate the building in the winter, and it's a way to eject heat in the summertime because of the evapotranspiration of the water that's built up in the roof. Directly behind us is the Verdesian, which is the second building we have designed for the same developer, the Albanese group, with much of the same design team. The building which is nearing completion. Many of the same strategies in that we've employed a microturbine to do some cogeneration. It's a slightly different systems approach than some of the things we did here. And we have collaborated with a landscape designer who's designing the park to the south of us, who proposed heliostats, which are these large mirrors which are on computer tracking devices so that they can reflect the sunlight directly into a park, which will otherwise see very little sunlight because it's going to be surrounded by a future building. Well, one of the advantages of a green roof is when it's raining, like it is right now, the soil on the roof retains a lot of the water. In hot weather, it'll then evaporate a lot of it back. But the main impact is you don't have to build a stormwater retention tank. In our case, we were able to downsize it dramatically. We're looking at other projects now where we may be able to eliminate it altogether because the soil, in effect, is retaining all the stormwater.
So it's simple, right? Build smarter. Build greener. Build with the future in mind. But, there's always a but, money. Building smarter costs more, doesn't it?
One of the concerns in the development community at large when Battery Park City created these requirements to do buildings with these environmental criteria was that they would be more costly and that they wouldn't be able to realize those cost increases in increased rents or increased sales. My understanding is that the Solaire leased out in record time and that they realized close to a 5% premium. They calculated they needed about a 3% premium in rents to amortize the additional costs to build a green building, and they feel like they've gotten that and then some. So it has proven not only that you can build all these things in New York, for which there was some question, but that you can realize a profit doing it, and that it provides an economic model for other developers, not only in Battery Park City, but in the private sector, to realize that there's a market for this, and that there's a willingness for that market to pay more.
When something becomes a marketing trend, that's a key to the fact that it taps into some deeper desire in society, I think. So, nothing is only a marketing trend. Marketing trends may appear superficial, but they always happen because they connect to something deeper.
What is that deeper thing? For you? For me? Maybe it's the desire to be connected, to make a difference, to make the world in some way, any way, better. And the way to change our reality is to change our perceptions. And the perception that sustainability is out of our reach is something we can no longer afford.
There's no big change that occurs without the economy being behind it, without actually all of the United States government being behind it. I think nothing big has happened without those two. And I think we really have to think about how that can happen.
I think people are realizing a couple of things. First, they're realizing that the resources of the earth are finite, and that we're going to run out of stuff at the rate population is growing, and even more important than the actual growth of population, at the rate that a kind of energy consumption is growing.
What's our culture saying about us, and how do we deal with this? And we know we want to live well. We know we want goods around us. We know we love shopping. How do we turn this culture into something that is sustainable? And that's a huge job.
We are 4.6% of the world's population. We consume over 25% of the world's resources. If we do the math that the developing nations want the same standard that we have set, it doesn't work. We must change the way we do things. We simply must.
For more information on this series, go to pbs.org. To order the 6-part DVD of Design E2, call PBS Home Video at 1-800-PLAY-PBS.